Hey everyone, Jesse here from Third Universe. I recently sat down with Aaron Andrew Wilson to talk about his game, Sovereign Skies. It's really great and you can pick it up here at thirduniverse.com. Anyway, here's the interview.
Little game, and this is my big game. This is Sovereign Skies, published by Deepwater. We had a Kickstarter that started in 2019, and actually the first time it failed, and then the second time we did really well. We rejiggered a lot of stuff, and I'm a graphic designer by trade, so I kind of took over for the second run through, which was nice. I had a lot of control at that point, and then we were able to really get it off the ground. And then because of COVID, it kind of slowed things down for the delivery. But it did get delivered to doorsteps, at least in America, in August of last year. Now it's in the hands of a lot of retailers and people all over the world really right now. So it's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
I'm happy with it.
And what was like the initial concept behind the game? Was it more of like the alien colonization, or was it the mechanics of the game?
Actually, it was not the mechanics of the game. Originally, I had been working on a game, or games in general, for about 5 years when I signed this. I signed it with Deepwater in like 2017.
Okay.
Or the beginning of 2018. Originally it was, when I started designing in general, really, my first design was a deck builder, which is kind of a new designer kind of approach. A lot of the times when you come across a game that you really like, you tend to think, well, a designer is going to say, well, I think I know how I can make this into what I want it to be, or how I can make it better. And that's kind of what happened. I started playing Dominion a lot, yes. Back in 2014 and thereabouts. And I thought, hey, I think I can maybe do this. I'd played around with RPG design when I was in high school back in the 80s, and I was playing Dungeons and Dragons and such. And so I really like the idea of inventing or recreating game mechanics and whatnot. So the game.
It was Dominion.
So game systems, yeah. So originally I had an idea for a sci-fi game. I called it Houses Rising originally, and it was based on the idea of sort of a Dune kind of approach. It was all humans, and it was a tongue-in-cheek kind of approach to colonization, where there's sort of this struggle, and there's no good guys. Everybody's like a corporate a-hole, and you were just trying to build up your corporate faction as big as possible. Now that game became other things. Basically it evolved, and I was introduced to a lot more new games at that point too, and I was playing different things. I became friends with some other designers, and I started play testing various iterations of that game, and so this is basically an evolution of an evolution of an evolution of that game. It's sort of 4 or 5 times removed from that original design. But where this came out of was actually I created this heavy kind of game at one point, and it was called Sky Rain.
Okay.
And roll and writes were starting to really take off at that time, and it was 2016, I would say 2016, somewhere in there. And I did a roll and write version of this heavy game, and I realized that roll and write version got to the core of what was fun about the game that I was designing. And that's what this game became. This game really was born from a roll and write version of a much heavier game.
Gotcha.
And that process really woke me up and was an enlightening experience, because I realized that that when you're iterating on design, trying to do huge differences, to make a different game from the game you're making, and trying to almost make a different experience but maintain the core of what you like about that other thing you're designing, really is an important part of the process of designing. So when I basically dropped that other design, I shelved it, and then the name changed because it was a completely different game at that point. And this became Sovereign Skies. So Sovereign Skies originally was also within the same theme. So I kept this theme throughout these different game iterations. And this too was sort of about this uprising or this democracy kind of happening, and these outside factions, which are the players, coming in to sort of capitalize and exploit based on this democratic kind of resolution of these different planets coming together. Well, when I originally pitched this to Deepwater Games, they were actually looking for a game of that sort because they were sort of world building at that time with an idea that Nolan, who's the CEO, had, and Ian Zhang, who was the developer. They were sort of coming together and trying to figure out what kind of game they wanted to create with this idea of this sci-fi world they had in mind. And when I talked to them about this game, they were like, "That's kind of perfect for this world that we're thinking of." Oh, you might want to. I forgot. So this idea that they had, we put it together, or we came together and talked through how this idea that I had fit into that, and we kind of brought the two ideas together, and we had this writer they have. Deepwater is a part of a larger company that also does comic books, Source Point Press. Yep. And if you know Source Point, then you know those guys are really creative and they're really interested in creating really cool ideas and whatnot. So it was really about this comic book idea that they had. And supposedly, at some point, they're going to be doing a Sovereign Skies comic book because
awesome.
of it. Yeah.
That's really cool.
And so they had one of their writers, one of the what's her name? It's escaping me right now. I want to say it's Katie. I can't remember.
So for right now, the writer Katie.
So one of the writers came up with an idea to kind of create this mythology, and then together we created the mythology of Sovereign Skies. And when I started, it was sort of this whole human kind of interaction, and this was before I knew about the Expanse, and it was really, really a lot like it, like that, the world of the Expanse, and how
because having the Expanse come out and seeing the imagery of this game, it kind of, you can see the connection.
There really is a lot of parallels there, and the sort of the political interaction of these different factions. Now when Deepwater basically wanted to kind of theme it, they really wanted to have the majestic alien kind of factor in there because they're big and colorful and interesting looking. And so when we got the artist Giacomo Tapiner to do the artwork, we let him kind of run wild with what kind of alien creatures he could create for each one of these planets.
Yeah, even just the three that are out here right now, each of them is intrinsically different in some form and has each that colorful pattern that, whether it's green and the green and the purples, or the red and the yellow and the white, works.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just incredibly colorful and interesting looking. And so the mythology behind each one of those and why those actions happen at those things are kind of all written. We have this sort of like Bible of like the legend of all of these things and how it all came together. Now all of that doesn't really come into play when you're playing this game.
But still, the aesthetic.
This game is a Euro, and it's very mechanical for the most part. But there is a lot of thought behind the characters and the world that this lives in. And in fact, right now I'm working with another designer, John Prather, who co-designed Fire in the Library.
Okay, yeah.
If you're familiar with that game, he and I are working on a second version of Sovereign Skies called Sovereign Suns.
Okay.
And so that's something that we've been designing for a little bit now. With it should be coming out from Deepwater again, either later at the end of this year or early 2022.
Congratulations on that.
Thank you. Thanks.
So, pretty much you went through pretty much almost all of my questions in terms of like which came first, the mechanics or the style. We have and like the initial idea for the game. And we've talked a little bit about like the different developmental stages as well. Overall, how many like iterations before this do you think there were?
Oh, countless. I mean, this alone, once I signed this game, it went into development with Deepwater, and Ian and I started working together. And that alone, there were probably 20 different iterations of the game. And it's pretty much the same game, but the kind of things we were trying to do, the little changes here and there, all those start to add up. And there's a crazy amount of playtesting and iteration that goes on before a game is released. Mm-hmm. And I mean, the game is just so much better for it too. I had another offer from a publisher, Mind Clash.
Okay.
And they were pretty much ready to publish the game as is. And I didn't end up going with them mainly because they're not US based, and I already knew Nolan, and I knew that Deepwater was this new company and they were excited about it, and I could be closer to them in the process and be really involved. So when I chose them, I mean, I wasn't really thinking about it, but they nurtured this game in a very unexpected way for me. I didn't realize that so much went into creating a game, or so much could go into creating a game after it's signed.
Sure.
And so we went through a long process of making sure it was smooth and it had all the mechanics the way we wanted it to be. Ian was a huge part of creating some of these little things that make it really unique in the way that it plays.